So I won't be speaking French. My Montenegrin is a bit rusty, so I will neću ni to pokušavati. I'd like to start, is there too much of an echo? No, you're okay? Okay. I'd like to start with a health and safety warning, please. Pay attention. I need to warn you that I shall be using metaphors and quite possibly sarcasm as well. This will require your involved minds if you do not want just to listen, but also to hear me. I shall also indulge in examples which will not be politically correct, but I do hope that I will not offend anyone. Looking at the bright side of things, no animals have been hurt in the process of writing this speech, especially no polar bears and no baby seals. I'd like to begin with, how many historians here? Can I ask historians to raise your hands? Historians, please raise your hands. Okay, fine. Now, I need a volunteer. Who's going to give me a short, sharp definition of what is history? Please, I need you to do that in less than 10 and a half chapters. What is history? Volunteers, please raise your hands. So many svijunaci nikom ponikoše I u crnu zemlju pogledaš. I can't believe this. Not a single historian dares to give a short, sharp definition of what history is. I'm asking for your cooperation. I'm asking for... Yes?
From Greek language, it's inquiry, enquête.
Okay, so that's one definition of history. You're wrong. Anybody else care to tell me what history is? Yep, over here. Come here, please.
Sociology of former society.
Sociology of a former society. Okay, and I will ask for one more help from the audience or the panel indeed. Please, what is history? Yes?
A narrative about the past with documents.
A narrative about the past based on documents. Okay. I'll calm down now and sort of stay here. After distributing some of these, Snežana, would you be kind enough just to pass on, sort of let them, spread them out and just let them pass through. Long live Julian Barnes, my favorite contemporary writer, not only because he managed to squeeze the history of the world into 10 and a half chapters, the title of one of the books that made him famous, apart from Flaubert's Parrot, but also because in his book, The Sense of an Ending, for which he got the Man Booker Award 2 years ago, he also gave me a great opening for this speech here. So what is history according to Julian Barnes? By the way, in his definitions, he also borrowed a lot from others. 1, history is the lies of the victors. 2, history is the self-delusions of the defeated. 3, none of the above. History is the memory of the survivors, most of whom are neither victorious nor defeated. 4, history is a raw onion sandwich. It just repeats itself. It burps. We've seen it again and again. Same old story, same old oscillation between tyranny and the rebellion, war and peace, prosperity and impoverishment. 5, this is my personal favorite. History is that certainty produced at the point where the imperfections of memory meet the inadequacies of documentation. By the way, this thought is attributed to the French 19th century historian Patrick Lagrange. 6, here you really have to pay attention. History depends on where we place the comma in a sentence, and how do we define the subject and the object in a sentence. This is my comment, and this is how Barnes explains it. After we broke up, comma, she slept with me. Now let's look at another version of that. After she slept with me, comma, we broke up. And I'll conclude with one final one. Barnes notes that the history that happens right under our noses ought to be the clearest, and yet it is the most deliquescent. Anybody knows the word deliquescent? I had to Google it up. Actually, Merriam-Webster helped me out. It means easy to melt or dissolve. In other words, unstable, not firm, not solid, not clear. And if you doubt that recent history is unclear, let us just look at Ukraine. So, who started the latest global mess? A bellicose, land-grabbing Vladimir Putin? Possibly. NATO, in its desire to spread east, despite promises and assurances made to Moscow 23 years ago? Maybe. The protesters on Maidan Square? Maybe. The kleptocrats of the Yanukovych regime? maybe. US Undersecretary of State Victoria Nuland, when telling the EU to FO, you know, what she said, and at the same time putting together a new government of a sovereign state. Now, I could equally well argue, and I'm sure that any one of you could as well, for any of these theories that I've just mentioned. So let's go from here to something that Snezhana Koren was talking about yesterday as well, and that's historical memories, especially historical collective memories. How much are they really related to history textbooks, recorded history, genuine history, mythological history? What are memories? A fragile concept at its best. Aren't they flimsy thoughts which tend to either improve or worsen with the passage of time, but which sure don't stay crystal clear, neither individual and especially not in the collective mind? How much can we really rely on memories, historical memories, myths? If you already haven't, I'd suggest you brush up on your reading on memory research done by Elliot Aronson, a psychologist best known for his work on cognitive dissonance. It shows just how easily memories are corrupted and used to justify our behavior today rather than shape it for tomorrow. For example, Iraq was invaded in 2003 because of, why was Iraq invaded? Because of oil. Well, if I remember well what Mr. Bush said, weapons of mass destruction, bravo, exactly, that was the excuse used there. Now, when those weapons of mass destruction were not found, the narrative changed. Suddenly it became bringing down the dictator, spreading democracy in the Middle East, fighting terrorism, anything to erase the memory of the initial reasoning and, God forbid, utter the words, we're sorry, we made a mistake, wrong intelligence, there were no weapons of mass destruction. Memory researchers love to quote Friedrich Nietzsche, although I'm not sure that Nietzsche actually said this. It's from a novel about Nietzsche, When Nietzsche Cried. He says, allegedly, I have done that, says my memory. I cannot have done that, says my pride, and remains unchangeable. Eventually, memory yields to the pride. 68 years ago, George Orwell wrote that in totalitarian states, and I would dare to extend that to today's society in general, even though we are not totalitarian states by and large, most of us. Orwell, the ruling caste, in order to keep its position, has to be thought to be infallible. But since in practice no one is infallible, apart from the Pope, it is frequently necessary to arrange past events in order to show that this or that mistake was not made, or that this or that imaginary triumph actually happened. Ljubljana historian and Snezhana's friend Božo Repe puts it in a much more simple way. Historians never know today what will tomorrow happen in the past. And you spoke about the manipulations of the past by the political elites of today, so I'm sort of building on that. Memories, historical memories, or maybe myths and mytho-histories. In a sociological sense, to simplify things, myths are an outside regulator of human behavior. Just like social norms, they affect the individual, they give us a route to this or that behavior, expectations, attitudes, etc., but they also become the foundation of our beliefs and judgments. And I will now focus on Balkan myths. Albeit, please keep in mind that Norway, Japan, or the United States offer no less when it comes to popular mythology. So the first great myth that we have here in the Balkans is about the Balkan male as the brave warrior. Well, first, even if they were brave warriors, for centuries they fought under foreign flags. And if we look at the most recent fighting done under our own individual flags, we will discover just how brave the Balkan male really was, especially when faced with the opposing side's defenseless civilians, women and children. Or the myth that the Balkans are an amazing region just bursting with Homo Balkanicus, the greatest talent for sports, especially soccer and basketball. And then we have the myths that we really, really love, the myths that we nurture about ourselves, whoever the us happens to be. And therefore, Croats are very cultured, very polite, very nice. They're not really Balkan, they're actually Mitteleuropäisch, nein? With a dash of Mediterranean coming through Dalmatia. Serbs, well, apart from being the greatest warriors ever, who even managed to defeat NATO 15 years ago, they also had medieval kings who used golden knives and forks when other European royalty used fingers to dismember a roast chicken. Bosniaks, the greatest victims ever, innocents and victims and nothing but. Macedonians, peaceful and peace-loving descendants of Alexander the Great and his father Philip. Slovenians, anybody from Slovenia here? No, nobody? Would a non-Slovene dare to tell me, how did the Postojnska jama come about? How was it created? You know the Postojnska jama, the Postojna cave? Nobody knows how it came about? A Slovene guy lost €1 and started digging to find it. Did I manage to offend anybody? Sorry, everybody, because that was my aim, to try and touch upon everybody, but okay, some of them were not necessarily here. We have the Greeks as well. For example, I live in Greece, where the theory is that everything around us is actually Greek in origin. Don't we just love to hate something or someone close to who and what we are, and yet slightly different, so that we can denounce him as less worthy than who and what we are? In his brilliant essay, Inventing the Enemy, Umberto Eco wrote in 2008 that it seems as if we cannot manage without an enemy. The figure of the enemy cannot be abolished from the process of civilization. The need is a second nature, even to a mild man of peace. In his case, the image of the enemy is simply shifted from a human object to a natural or social force which in some way threatens us and has to be defeated, whether it be capitalistic exploitation, environmental pollution, or third world hunger. Eco adds that trying to understand other people means destroying the stereotype without denying or ignoring the otherness. And that otherness and that kind of an attitude is exactly what the Center for Democracy and Reconciliation has been doing for the past 15 years with the Joint History Project, these books here. The genesis of the project 15 years ago were to go into a research study, which ended up with a book called Clear in the Balkans, published in 2002, which shows how in the, at that time, 11, today 13 countries spanning from Slovenia to Cyprus, from Turkey to Albania, how history teaching in secondary schools is abused and taught along the lines of, we're the great and the good, and you are not. We were always the victims, you were always the aggressors. From that initial idea and that research study, by the way, to this day, the only comparative study of history teaching in Southeast Europe, we reached the phase that we now have the joint history textbooks which have been produced, workbooks, which have been produced in no less than 10 languages of the region, plus English as our lingua franca, plus Japanese. The Tokyo University translated it to use as the history of the Balkans. The methodology is a multi-perspective methodology. We do not teach history along the lines of, this is how it happened and in no other way, but instead we shed light on a certain historical event from primary sources from different perspectives. And we allowed the students to develop the thing that they have between their ears, i.e. the brain, to develop critical thinking, because we believe that that is the education for the future, and that is the way that reconciliation can happen through education. This project has been hugely successful. It has so far trained over 2,000 history teachers throughout the region in using this new methodology. It has been lauded by the European Parliament, by the European Commission. It has been supported by no less than 28 donors. I'm happy to say one of the first donors was actually the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, thank you, and the United States government. I don't see anybody here, but USAID was also one of the first donors. To this day, it's 28. Currently, the biggest donor is the European Commission. Sadly, no money is as yet from France. I hope you can pass the message onwards. Thank you very much. And we have covered 4 historical periods here: the Ottoman Empire, rise of the nation states, Balkan Wars, and the Second World War. All very tough or very bad and problematic periods. How did we tackle them? Well, we tackled them because we assembled together a majestic team, 2 of which, 2 members of that team took part in your event. One is Ms. Snežana Koren, the other one was Professor Neven Budak, yesterday, the author, the collector of those photographs. And they agreed upon everything which is in these books. We're right now, as we speak, embarking on the next ambitious phase of our project, which will be to put together the history of the 1990s. It has been our ambition so far from the very beginning. We did not dare to do that because it would have been political suicide for the project. And by now, I believe, Tvrko, I have used up much more than my time, yeah? So I'll shut up now, and I'll be very happy to answer any other questions you have about the... Yes, let me just say one more thing. The Joint History Project and the Center have been awarded last year the annual Human Rights Award by the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, the German foundation that I'm sure most of you know about, and it is a global award, and we're extremely proud of that. The award was presented by the President of the European Parliament, Mr. Martin Schulz. Thank you.